Morning glory, evening grace, brother and sister, to have everybody back along with us here with a Temperance Awakening as we continue our vaping lectures, looking at our fifth vaping lecture here today. Going to be looking at nicotine addiction, so got this lecture here, then going to have, let's see here, see, maybe going to have at least one more, maybe two more lectures before we get into our therapeutic type lectures here by way of introduction, but looking at some very important things here. Like today, actually at the end, we have a little bit of a questionnaire survey for people to take to see whether or not you have a vaping addiction. Of course, some people are aware that they do, some people kind of aren't sure, they played with it a little bit, and so toward the end of this lecture, we'll give you some questions here to help you identify whether or not you have a nicotine, like a vaping addiction, particularly. A nicotine addiction with vaping, of course, is what we're doing here. And whenever a person is addicted to nicotine, it invades every aspect of their life. Like addicts physically crave the chemical, habitual users mentally desire the drug's feel-good effects, such as relaxation and stress relief. The hook can become behavioral, too triggered, for example, after meals, with friends, under stress, like at work often, like whenever people, have that trigger to want nicotine. Vaping delivers nicotine incredibly efficiently. Addiction specialists, such as Dr. Stephen Karp, a chief medical officer at the Breathe Life Healing Centers in West Hollywood, California, worry that vaping is actually more addictive than cigarettes because vape juice often contains higher concentrations of nicotine than cigarettes, and the body metabolizes it more quickly. Whenever a person vapes, nicotine rushes through their lungs into their bloodstream and starts affecting their brain within 8 to 20 seconds. It disrupts the normal relationship between a neurochemical called acetylcholine, which is for short known as ACH, which plays a vital role in muscle contraction, cognition, memory, and more, and its receptors. And we can think of those receptors as doorbells. Pressing the doorbell outside a home causes someone inside to open the door, but for the doorbell to work, somebody must use a finger to press the bell. Nicotine chemically resembles that finger. Once it binds to the receptor, i.e. presses the doorbell, the cell opens the door and lets it in. Like imagine hearing a doorbell ring, opening the door, seeing your best friend and letting him or her inside, only to discover that it's a burglar in disguise. When nicotine attaches to ACH receptors, it triggers feel-good sensations such as alertness or calmness, focus or relaxation, which makes a person want more of it. It also stimulates the release of dopamine in the brain. We associate nicotine use with feeling good, so, of course, a person wants more. Now, like a similar effect there happens with really anything from things that we would consider to be a little bit more innocent, like sugar. Like when a person has like a sugar addiction especially, a person wants to eat, pie, cake, candy, whatever, all the way to really hard drugs like cocaine and heroin. And like the National Institute of Health considers nicotine as addictive as heroin and cocaine. Then over time, the brain increases its number of ACH receptors, a phenomenon not observed with other addictive drugs. However, having more of these receptors intensifies the cravings for more nicotine, which makes trying to quit even harder because those receptors specifically want more nicotine. And that's the chemical cycle of nicotine addiction. And now looking at conditioning factors. And people get hooked on, nicotine for a number of reasons, particularly now talking about e-cigarettes. That could be their environment, social settings, emotion, stress, like a number of factors. Like I once met a younger lady who had really young kids, and having to deal with her two young kids, caused her stress, so that led her to use nicotine as a coping mechanism. And people puff, in certain situations, maybe just like sipping coffee in the morning, like a lot of people, they want to smoke with coffee, like some people want to, just have a puff first thing that they wake up, which is a really good sign of a nicotine addiction. Like some people like driving to work or riding a bus to work, after having lunch with coworkers, maybe after having dinner, with friends or relatives or whatever. And then when repeated, these behaviors become wired as cues to your brain to vape and also make it harder to quit. And that process is called conditioning. Like conditioning depends on the people, places, and things that you associate with e-cigarettes, but the result is usually the same. A person puts themselves in a vape triggering situation and they'll want the missing piece of that puzzle, the e-cigarette. Emotional conditioning also plays a role. Like, let's say, for example, that you associate, kind of like what we just said there, like if you associate chocolate chip cookies with happiness and comfort, the next time a person feels depressed, what's a great easy way to boost their mood? They get some chocolate chip cookies. And the more you eat them to make yourself feel better, the more your body's going to want to eat them to churn out feel-good chemicals such as dopamine and serotonin. And vaping is the same way. Nicotine has the same effect on the body. When a person is down or stressed, puffing lifts them up and makes them feel better, so they're going to turn to that e-cigarette, into a personal coping mechanism. And defeating these conditioning factors, can feel like the hardest part of the quitting process. Which is why, this program that we're going to be looking at, our therapeutic lectures, they focus intensely on beating these things. And now particularly looking at nicotine addiction and the teenage brain, because kind of same with, tobacco. Most people start tobacco, whenever they're very young, like a teenager, like some people in their early 20s, but, very young either way. We got that light young 20s, just down all the way down to 12 years old. Like with tobacco, like with, cigarettes, cigars, smokeless tobacco, the same thing with vaping. We've got that really young age, kind of like 13, to like 20 years old. And, nicotine spells trouble at any age, but it's extremely dangerous, too, before the brain develops fully. And the brain doesn't fully develop until around age 25. And that's why scientists agonize, have agonized before, like about, young people using tobacco, and now with young people who vape. And like teens are vaping now, but, they may not see the worst results until much further down the road. And there isn't an easy, ethical way to study precisely what nicotine does to a teenager's brain, but we know that it does interrupt its normal function. Like research on young lab animals reveals that nicotine can thwart processes critical to impulse control, focus, learning memory, and even brain development itself. And a key problem goes back to nicotine's similarity to acetylcholine in the brain and its skill at fooling those receptors which actively control the parts of the brain maturing during adolescence. And people still don't know quite for sure, but scientists think that exposure to nicotine as a teenager increases the brain rewarding properties of other drugs, like including alcohol, cocaine, meth, and opioids, which is why, like nicotine, I call nicotine like vaping, and tobacco is often called a gateway drug, to harder things. Like, we do know that we always want more of those feel-good chemicals, so, it's very easy to understand how, amplifying them lays the groundwork for nicotine addiction. And see, vape juice, a big problem with vape juice, though, is that it contains more than just nicotine. Like, you think about bubble gum and cotton candy, for example. Like a young person, even older people, but especially a young person, their mouth is going to water whenever they think of bubble gum and cotton candy. And see, that's what's in a lot of this vape juice. And like a lot of other, addiction specialists wonder whether these carefully designed flavors offer a dopamine rush of their own. See, just like we said, like these things filled with sugar, like cotton candy flavor and, like bubble gum and so forth, that gives dopamine a rush of its own if you just eat a bag of cotton candy or chew a piece of bubble gum. And that's a big problem here with vaping. Like as published in 2018 in Neuropharmacology, a team of researchers at Yale investigated that phenomenon. They gave rodents plain and flavored liquids, both containing nicotine. The sweet flavoring made the nicotine more palatable and increased the animal's nicotine consumption. All of which means that quitting nicotine, it's certainly usually harder for teenagers than for adults. A news story published in California Healthline in September 2019 provides evidence for this problem. A young man began smoking cigarettes in high school, but after hearing that e-cigarettes were safer, he switched to vaping. Not surprising. His nicotine addiction worsened. After a couple of years, he wanted to quit vaping so badly that he turned back to the original problem, smoking. Like he said that Juul made my nicotine addiction a lot worse, he told a reporter. When I didn't have it for more than 2 hours, I'd get very anxious. Of course, great thing now is that Juul is no longer allowed to make e-cigarettes, as of just a couple of months ago at the present time of this recording this lecture. Then in 2018, B&G Case reports reported a twist that we saw back in one of our miss number 6. Teenagers vaping at a young age are twice as likely to try cigarettes later in life because of nicotine dependence or other social factors. And switching to smoking certainly isn't the answer. The solution is to quit nicotine altogether. So like case in point, encouraged by his parents, this young man at age 17 enrolled in a quit program, the same type of program that we're using here with this textbook. He enrolled in that quit program, and after vaping for 3 years and puffing whenever he had a free moment, this young man comments, "I was hooked from the end of the first week, and I loved trying different flavors. Once I got it going with vape, it was like my puppy dog, always there in my pocket, in my hands, between my lips, inhaling and exhaling." And that young man offers a good example of how easily teenagers can get hooked. Vaping literally rewires their brains. Fortunately, this young man didn't fall prey to any other substances. He went through the quit program, and he gave up vaping for good. And now looking at withdrawal. And like with any addiction, withdrawal has both physical and mental components. The body reacts to the absence of nicotine in severe ways. A study published in Nicotine and Tobacco Research in 2019 examined 109 smokers who had switched to vaping. Researchers at the University of Vermont found that 7 days of abstinence from e-cigarettes produced the following withdrawal symptoms: craving for e-cigarettes, cravings for traditional cigarettes, impulsive behavior, inability to feel pleasure, which is a common symptom of depression, and mood swings. Like giving up a daily habit triggers a major change in mindset, and it also has an emotional component, as the study suggests. You might feel defenseless, hopeless, or like you're losing your best friend, and withdrawal can affect relationships too. Positive feelings can fuel addiction, but so can a desire to avoid these nasty components of withdrawal, which is why we'll address them very carefully, step by step through the quit program whenever we start getting into our therapeutic lectures. And it's good to know that you can quit. Quitting is a process. Of course, above all, it takes desire. Then it's going to take some commitment, some work, and some time to move past the cravings and create genuine, healthy alternatives to a chemical dependency. And kind of like what we've already said a little bit there, vaping is certainly just as difficult to quit as like traditional cigarettes and smokeless tobacco, maybe even harder. And like maybe you're a person that's already tried to quit, that's already tried to quit and you're struggling. Maybe you just feel totally powerless over this nicotine addiction. But you have to know, though, that you do have the power to take action. Lots of people have quit, and you can too. Anybody, no matter how addicted, can, quit vaping. And like through the process that we're going to go through here, which is a 28-day program, and a willingness to live better, longer, and stronger, will help. Will help us kick the habit. And so now here, in conclusion to today's lecture, we're going to look at some questions here, just a few, not very many, to see if you are addicted to nicotine. And then we're also going to give some scoring at the end of this. And like we'll tell you kind of where you are on that addiction pyramid. So are you addicted to nicotine? As I said, these are all just yes-no questions. And I encourage you to write them down. That's why we'll give you time to write them down. We'll give you a moment here, get a piece of paper, or get a pen, or like if you're on a laptop or something, like some people can, pull up Microsoft Word, or you can pull up like an app, a notepad app or something, if you can do that as well. But we'll give you a moment here to get ready. Of course, good thing about technology, you can pause the video and come back. And now here looking at our first question. Have you ever vaped or used e-cigarettes regularly? Yes or no? Have you tried to stop but couldn't do it? If you stopped for a while, did you feel ill or experience withdrawal symptoms? And some of those things that we mentioned. Like cravings, stress, mood swings. So if you stopped for a while, did you feel ill or experience withdrawal symptoms? Have friends or family talked to you or complained about your e-cigarette use? Have friends or family talked to you or complained about your e-cigarette use? Do you hide your vaping paraphernalia from loved ones? Like paraphernalia, obviously, just there, a proper word for like your vaping products. Do you hide your vaping products from loved ones? As soon as you wake up, do you feel the urge to puff? As soon as you wake up, do you feel the urge to puff? When you leave the house, do you always have your e-cigarette with you? When you leave the house, do you always have your e-cigarette with you? Do you find it hard to refrain from vaping in places where it's not allowed? Do you find it hard to refrain from vaping in places where it's not allowed? And so now go ahead and score these. Look over your answers. Assign 1 point to each yes. So it's pretty straightforward. For every yes that you had to those questions, it's 1 point. And now add up your score and see where you fall. See how many points that you have there. If you answered 1 to 2, if you had 1 or 2 yeses, you don't have a problem yet, but you're playing with fire, and you need to go where you're ahead. And just drop it. Of course, we encourage you, like even if you're still playing with fire, still view, our future lectures. But, you really don't have an addiction yet. So just try to lay it all down and quit. If you had 3 to 5 yeses, you probably think that you can stop whenever you want to, but it's already too late. You're hooked and you need help. You do have an addiction if you had at least 3 yeses, 3 to 5. And then if you had 6 to 8 yeses, you have a full-blown addiction. But the good news is that's what we're here for. We can break that. And so the next lecture that we meet here, we're going to address parents. We're going to have a thing here about parents, and then we're going to actually, it's just all for parents here. We're going to give parents here a bit of a word of encouragement, like with teenagers and all who vape, and then we'll get into our therapeutic lectures here. And so we're going to be uploading these here on our platforms. We're going to be uploading these here now on a daily basis. That's what we're going to be doing. And so like previously, like with Temperance Awakening, like with our tobacco, alcohol lectures, like other things we did, our first few lectures here, we kind of were just doing this on a weekly basis, but now though we're going to be doing this on a daily basis. So tomorrow, as I said, we're going to address parents, and then the following day after that, we're going to be uploading every day, like for our 28-step program. And so thanks so much for being with us here, and we'll be right back here. Now, like I said, tomorrow at this present time, and so hang in there, and we're going to be looking at these lectures here to help people. That's what it's all about, amen? So we're going to help people, give people the help that they need, so you come back and you be with us, amen, and share these. Somebody who does vape, playing with vaping a little bit, like a lot of young people, they want to start this stuff, point them to us, encourage them not to, and so certainly we'll be able here with effort, be able to help everybody, amen. And so thanks so much for being with us here today, and we'll see you next time. And until that ever can the shadows flee away, I'm Dr. Cooper, and I love you, and I appreciate you.